Hey photographers, if you've already seen my review of the mirrorless Nikon Z7, this is going to be a little bit of deja vu. This is the mirrorless Nikon Z6, a nearly identical camera. And if you winced at the price of the Z7, you'll probably smile at the price of the Z6. And like the Z7, it's the electronic viewfinder with an OLED display that impresses, which, if you're coming from a DSLR, is going to be an important feature. Now, this video is fairly long, so I've provided a menu below to skip to the part that interests you. And the Z6 has come along to Hawaii. Holidays are always an opportunity for binge photography, and I do mostly shoot with the viewfinder. It's bright, crisp, and colorful, and it shows you the image exactly as it will be taken with a preview of the exposure, white balance, and picture control setting. I do mostly shoot with the viewfinder, and it's bright, crisp, and clear with pure and natural colors. It shows me the image exactly as it will be taken with a preview of the exposure, white balance, and picture control color setting. Like the Z7, the Z6 uses a full-frame sensor, but a lower resolution, 24.5 megapixels instead of 45.7. Shooting with the Z6 feels fast, little or no shutter lag. The image I see as I press is the image I get, and that's a most appreciated detail. I'm shooting with the 24-70 kit lens, and I've also borrowed the 35mm f1.8 prime. The EXIF for all the photos is on Flickr, so you can tell which lens was used for which shot. The Z6 tips the scale at 585 grams, the 24-70 adds 500 grams for a total just over a kilo. But it's a nice size with a simple, somewhat utilitarian design. The magnesium alloy body has black plastic accents and covers. The Nikon swoosh has moved to the side. Now the fit for my hand is superb. It's contoured for a solid right hand hold, and a thumb grip feels exactly designed for me. My index finger falls perfectly on the on-off shutter button combination. And it's surrounded by a video record key, ISO, and exposure adjustment buttons, which are easy to find with my eye on the viewfinder. There's a front dial under the shutter button, and a back dial hangs out over the back right corner, and they serve a variety of functions. The mode dial's on the left. It has a push-to-turn button, an unnecessary precaution. It's a very simple layout: auto, program shutter and aperture priority, manual, and 3 presets. The dual custom function keys beside the lens on the right side feel innovative and useful, and they're directly under my third and fourth fingers. After acquiring the motor skills with the Z7 combined with the right side keys, this provides the best single-hand controls that I've experienced. The viewfinder's diopter adjusts using a pull-out dial, and it adjusts enough for my prescription. On the other side, the monitor mode button selects the display or switches automatically when the viewfinder senses an object. The 3.2 million dot LCD swivels up and down but not forward, and thoughtfully there's enough clearance to do that even when it's mounted on a tripod release plate. This is a touchscreen for tap and snap, touch focus, as well as changing settings and using the menu. There's no option to use the screen as a touchpad while shooting with the viewfinder. The stills video switch surrounds the display option button beside the viewfinder, and the AF button is a little further to the right. Below that, the focus position joystick, the I button, and the control pad. Like the Z7, menu on the right, which makes sense to access it easily with your eye on the viewfinder. In fact, nearly all the buttons are on the right side, which really makes sense. Only play and delete are on the left. The card door is on the right. It's a single XQD slot. I find XQD cards more solid and reliable than SD, but they are more expensive. The battery door is far away from the tripod mount, so changing batteries won't require you to remove the quick release plate. A plethora of ports on the left side and an HDMI cable clamp is included. That's appreciated by those using external monitors or recorders. These covers are weather sealed and kind of awkward. Mic in, headphone out, USB-C, and the slightly larger and more reliable HDMI mini, not micro port. Now I'm not sure about the control panel display. While useful to see exposure settings, battery status, and remaining card space, those are available on the other displays also. But wouldn't it be nice if battery status and available card space were displayed when the camera is off? Sadly, it goes blank. The Z6 has Bluetooth to connect to the free Nikon Snapbridge app for synchronizing time and location with a smartphone and the camera, and to transfer photos automatically, a feature we find useful while traveling, posting to Instagram while we're hydrating. The shutter's fast response is unfortunately offset with a very slow review. It takes too long for the image to appear and then to switch back. It's enough to make you turn the feature off. Well, it's not on by default, and it's found on the playback menu. On displays on either the monitor or viewfinder. Monitor only doesn't display a review image when shooting with the viewfinder. The Z6 uses a full mechanical shutter, but there's no explicit shutter control. Silent photography, the last option, changes to electronic shutter. It is fully silent. Then in custom setting D5, an electronic front curtain control. These should be in one place. The fastest electronic shutter speed is 1/2000. The Z6 has 3 JPEG sizes, 24, 13, and 6 megapixels, and the size of RAW files can be set independently, useful if the JPEGs are for immediate social media use. In addition to uncompressed 24-bit TIFF, there are 3 quality settings, basic, normal, and fine, each with a star variant to maximize quality. All of these can be combined with RAW. The 24-70 lens must be rotated out before it can be used, otherwise it's a solid performer for this camera, and I think we can expect Nikon to eventually release a line of premium Z lenses. Before setting the exposure, select the meter mode for the scene, press the I key on the right side, or touch the I on-screen button. This overlay menu is touch navigable. In addition to the 3 standard meter modes, matrix, center weighted, and spot, a very useful highlight mode, which makes sure that bright objects are never overexposed. In operation, I found that I wanted to change the meter modes frequently, usually to take advantage of highlight mode, so with custom setting F2, I assigned it to one of the function buttons on the right side of the lens mount. That simplified access for me without repositioning my hand or my eye. The exposure mode dial is remarkably simple. Push the lock button and turn to select. Program, the P setting, automates both the shutter and the aperture. Adjust the ISO sensitivity by pressing the ISO key on top and turning the top dial. Automate this using the front dial, which switches in and out of auto mode. Program mode is flexible. Turn the top dial, the main command dial, for other combinations that also provide a proper exposure. There's no AE lock button. Press the joystick. AEL appears bottom left. There is a dedicated exposure compensation button, then press and turn either the front or the rear dial. 5 stops up and down with a numerical readout at the bottom of the screen. There's a custom button option B2. When on is selected, the rear dial adjusts EV without the need to hold the button, although now there's no EV numerical display, just the meter screen right. With reset, the EV resets to 0 when the camera is powered off. In shutter priority, the rear dial selects the shutter speed from 1/8000 to 30 seconds, or flash x200. In aperture priority, the front dial adjusts the iris. On the 24-70 lens, the aperture opens to a constant f4, closes to f22. In manual, both controls are available. The screen right scale now displays the exposure meter to guide you to a properly exposed setting. Manual enables a timer mode, which opens the shutter with the first press and closes it with the second. As well as a bulb mode, the shutter stays open as long as the shutter is pressed. The viewfinder and the monitor display the image that will be taken. A custom setting D8 overrides some settings, including color picture control and white balance. By default, the display shows the widest aperture, so this f22 image has a much deeper focus field than the preview. Assign one of the custom buttons to preview, and then press it to see the actual focus result. ISO can be set from 100 to 51200. The extended mode adds 1 stop below and 2 stops above. As the ISO increases, in-camera JPEG images get increasingly mushy, and the RAW files start to pick up color noise. But I was very happy with the images I took at 6400. The auto ISO settings include a maximum, both without and with flash, and a triggering shutter speed. I reset it to 6400. Lightroom is effective for managing a large dynamic range, particularly from RAW files, but Nikon also offers 2 in-camera settings. Active D-Lighting offers 4 dedicated as well as an auto mode. And although they should be adjacent, you'll find the HDR mode a few screens down. In addition to auto, up to 3 stops of range can be set. Other options enable it for just one shot and to save the individual images as RAW files. Compared to the reference image, there is some improvement. The ability to see details in the shaded areas using both active D-Lighting and HDR, which even at 3 stops is free of the usual HDR effects. The focus system is very straightforward. On the I menu, there's single, manual, and continuous, where the camera continues to focus while the shutter is soft pressed. And in video mode, full time, which does the same thing without requiring the soft press. Soft press the shutter or use the dedicated AF on button to focus. Focus is fast and confident. In single focus, 4 sizes are available: wide, large, and small, single point, and pinpoint. Using the joystick or the control circle, single point can be positioned on a 21 by 13 grid, which covers nearly the entire screen with 273 points. Pinpoint covers a slightly smaller area and has a lot more points. The manual claims it's a little slower. Very accurate, though. If that feels like too many points to work with, custom setting A5 jumps over every other point for faster navigation. Of course, there is the touchscreen to select any point quickly. And that works well in video mode as a rack focus while recording, although the transition's not quite as smooth as I'd like. Auto Area is the full autofocus mode. This mode includes object tracking, so I set up my Brio train and switch to continuous mode. Press OK for the selection square, press OK again to track the object, which it does. However, it doesn't focus, even when I press the AF on button. You have to press the shutter. In burst mode, it does focus while shooting. With custom setting A1 on focus, it audibly slows the burst. I set A3 to quick, but no improvement. There are 2 ways to get to manual focus, either using the switch on the lens or using the I menu. I recommend the menu. With manual focus, on-screen indicators appear bottom left. When the circle appears, you're in focus. The magnify buttons can be used to punch in for an expanded view. I'll demonstrate peaking when we talk about video. There's a dedicated AF on button for back focus. Now you have to use the custom setting menu option A7 to select AF on only to disable the shutter autofocus. I much prefer when manual focus deselects the shutter AF and AF on works in manual mode. Focus bracket, or focus shift to use the Nikon term, can be used to create a series of images with changes in focus. This can be used either to make sure that you have a sharp image of an object that's difficult to focus, or to create a focus stack. It takes a few trials. For this scene, I ended up taking 25 images with a step width of 8 to achieve the depth of field I wanted. With 0 interval, the shots are continuous. And then start. Although you hear the shutter click, there's no screen display while shooting. Reviewing the images shows the focus progress. And then you can take them to Photoshop to create the stacked image. The I menu has white balance presets, more than the usual. There are 3 variations of auto, and each includes color shift options. A second auto for natural light, and then the standard set. But even here, fluorescent has 5 variations. The Kelvin settings are more precise than most, and there are 5 custom presets. Capturing a custom preset is straightforward. Press and hold the OK button to enter preset capture mode. Position the square over a neutral white reference, the back of my Chroma Selfie 2, and press OK again to capture. With white balance set, select a color profile. Nikon calls these picture controls. There are a variety of presets to choose from, including neutral and flat, which would be useful for video to be color graded, and then an Easter egg feature, 20 different effect modes, which may or may not appeal to you. All of these also have sub-controls to customize the adjustments to your taste. And again, Nikon offers more control than most. 3 types of sharpening, as well as contrast, brightness, saturation, and hue. And the adjustments, as you see here with saturation, are relatively meaningful. Of course, these settings are applied only to JPEG files, so you'll always have a clean RAW version. Nikon says the Z6 and lens combination offer 5-axis stabilization. There's a menu setting, vibration reduction, with 3 settings, normal, sport, and off. Now, shooting handheld and framing with the LCD, not the viewfinder, this is off at 70mm. That's my inherent shake. Switch to DX crop and it's pretty obvious. Turn vibration reduction on and you might think I'm using a tripod. Then I started snapping and was able to shoot without blur to about 1/2 second. That's about 5 stops from the 1/60th I feel is my inherent minimum. The manual says sports mode is when both you and your subject are moving. From the dedicated drive mode button, set a 2 to 20 second timer, and then use custom setting C2 to select 1 to 9 shots and an intershot delay up to 3 seconds. That should enable you to get in the shot and make sure everyone's eyes are open. At D4, if all you need is a shutter delay, that can be set from 0.2 to 3 seconds, but isn't as easily activated or disabled. There are continuous low, 1 to 5 frames per second, and high, which is rated for 5.5 frames per second. Using manual exposure and focus settings and saving Finestar JPEGs, in the bottom right, the remaining frame switches to buffer status when I start shooting. The Z6 records 5.5 images per second continuously until it runs into the 200 image limit. Then using extended high, it captures 11 images per second, but the buffer fills in 4 seconds, slowing to about 7 per second. Many viewers have tried to rationalize the irrational limitation of 200 images in burst mode, but only Nikon enforces this limit. In the next Z camera, let's ask for a larger buffer and no limitation, and those who want 200 will have the option to select it. In a camera that expects me to create focus stacks and panoramas manually, I don't expect to find multiple exposure, one of the easier tasks to do in post. And should you decide to use it, Nikon provides more capability than the competition. Choose to take one or a series with from 2 to 10 images, 4 overlay modes, the ability to save individual images, and overlays to see the images as you proceed. And then I discovered an Easter egg. When you combine multiple exposure with continuous, the images are taken at burst speed, creating an interesting superimposed action series. The interval timer is also full-featured, with a start time and date, interval lengths from 1/2 second up to 24 hours, up to 10,000-1 intervals with up to 9 shots each, and the ability to create a dedicated folder for the images. Shooting starts from the menu, not with the shutter, and there's no display unless you press the menu button. Press OK to pause, and then use the menu to restart or quit. Now, oddly found on the stills menu and not available when an external monitor is connected, there's also a time-lapse movie mode, again with a full set of features, including output up to 4K 30 frames. Although most DSLR cameras aren't well suited for video, the mirrorless Z6 is. Just turn the selector. No crop as I switch to video. Video mode has an independent menu, and many of the settings, like white balance and picture control, can either be the same as photo or independent. That also applies to the shutter, aperture, ISO, and meter mode. Switching between video and stills, each retains their own settings. I wish all cameras did that. However, when you switch to video, the exposure meter screen right disappears. I wish it didn't do that. Custom settings G1 and G2 customize the I menu and the control keys for video. In video mode, image area selects either FX, the full sensor, or DX for a 1.5 crop, useful to extend your zoom. Press the red button to record. Recordings are limited by card space or 30 minutes. Resolutions up to 16:9 or UHD 4K with frame rates up to 30 are available. In HD 1080, 120 and 60 are supported, as well as 3 slow motion modes. Note that 120 frames and the slow-mo modes force the DX crop. In HD there are 2 quality settings which equate to data rates. The 4K data rate is about 120 megabits. At HD high quality is 50 megabits while normal records at 25 megabits. The 5 times slow is also 25 megabits. Both MOV and MP4 are available. Both use the same H.264 video codec. The difference is audio. MOV uses PCM, MP4 uses AAC. It would be nice if the shutter button would start and stop video recording, but I should note that custom setting G3 configures the OK button as record start stop. And for all the things that Nikon did right for video, they didn't go all in. There are a lot of essential features missing or incompletely implemented. The good? There's a fairly extensive timecode function. There's focus peaking for manual focus, configured on custom setting D10, with 4 color options and 3 sensitivity settings. But it has to be turned off to access the limited zebra function, G6, highlight display, using RGB instead of the more standard waveform values. 224 is about 100%. Both of these can be assigned to the I menu, focus peaking to a custom button. Another handy customization is power aperture open and close, which is assigned to the function buttons beside the lens. In general, cameras with an HDMI output have a setting to select whether the output is a clean recordable feed or includes the menu and screen overlays. That's not available here. In video mode, only a clean feed is available, and that means most of this section is shot from the LCD screen. The HDMI options, most of which apply specifically to video, have been relegated to the setup menu. The HDMI output follows the movie menu frame size and frame rate setting. These options can lower but not raise the resolution. So when frame size is set to 4K, you can use this setting to force it to HD, but not the reverse. In the advanced options, the output data depth can be set at either 8 or 10 bits. Using 10-bit for external recordings prevents some size and rate options from recording internally. I'm not sure why this might be an issue when the Z6 uses XQD cards. Also available only for external recording is Nikon's NLog format. This also overrides the ability to record internally. That's unfortunate. NLog will force the ISO to 800, so I'm using the same ISO for NLog off. This is a 10-bit external recording of the DSC Lab Xyla chart. I close the aperture to f22, so only the leftmost rectangle is showing the 224 highlight alert. Judging both by eye and waveform, 8 stops are visible. Switching to NLog, the brightest rectangle is at 60% on the waveform, enabling me to open the iris to f6.3, revealing 11 stops. Even with ISO 800, the darkest areas are free of noise. And this is the same result as the Z7. The View Assist setting changes the response of the LCD screen so that it doesn't look washed out while using NLog. Note that if you do plan to use an external recorder, set C3, the power off delay standby timer, to no limit. The same vibration reduction for stills is also available with an independent setting for video. And there's also an electronic VR setting. With both turned on, to get this shot, I've got 1 foot on a bench and 1 arm around a pole. These are impressive results for in-camera stabilization. To evaluate the Z6's susceptibility to rolling shutter, I turned both vibration reduction and electronic VR off, just so they're not trying to compensate. With 4K video mode, the Z6 shows quite a bit of bending as I pan back and forth. Then switching to HD 1080, not so much. So if you need a fast pan... Now, by the light of a single candle, I'm using full-time autofocus in continuous mode, and I've turned on the custom setting A4 for face detect. And considering the low light in this situation, it's actually working, and that's quite nice. This is the 35mm f1.8 lens, and I've turned up the ISO to 12,800, which is exposing this scene to this level. That seems to be working. I was not able to turn a custom Kelvin setting down to the color temperature I wanted for the candlelight, but I was able to capture a preset, which is the color balance that you see. There are not many cameras that can take stills, watch the bottom right, without interrupting a video recording, but the Z6 can. Just press the shutter button. The touch shutter doesn't work in video mode. The only limitation: these images are 16:9 video aspect 8 megapixel images, even smaller than small JPEGs. The Nikkor 24-70 f4S is a solid feeling unit, tipping the scales at 500 grams. The filter diameter is 72 millimeters. Not sure what S represents, but I suspect it's a generic stabilization badge. It's a constant f4 to f22. Closest focus is 30 centimeters, and if you can work at that distance, the bokeh is quite pleasant. With custom setting f2, it's easy to overlook the last control, which selects the function of the lens's focus ring. It can adjust focus, aperture, or exposure compensation. Nice. In manual focus, it reverts to focus. G2 has independent settings for video. The selection here is called power aperture, and the adjustments are nicely smooth. Only Nikon provides a playback and a retouch menu. The playback menu includes settings for playback display options to view photo details. I'm not sure why these aren't on by default. And the retouch menu, in addition to the usual like crop, resize, and red eye removal, includes distortion control to adjust the effects of wide-angle lenses and perspective control to adjust the keystone effect. You could easily overlook image overlay, which creates a multi-exposure image from two photos. That's not as full-featured as the photo mode version, but still useful. And then there's an extensive raw processing module, which includes the ability to set image quality, adjust exposure value, select another picture control option, or adjust the active D lighting to modify the dynamic range. This is as good as it gets. Now, even if you're not familiar with Nikon's menu system, it's logical and well laid out. One issue I have is that the scrolling list on some of the tabs is getting a little long. There are a few settings that aren't where they should be. The help feature, while not available for all settings, is useful, but the generic message for a setting that's not available isn't. And I'm still not sure what makes a setting qualify as a custom setting as opposed to a setup, like power off delay. That's a setup feature. HDMI is video. Customization makes it easy to get to your most used features, either with custom buttons or via the I menu, and if you prefer, you can use My Menu to create a custom page of settings. The manual, and there are two available for download, both a user manual and a reference manual, also doesn't list the exclusions for some settings and features. For a mirrorless camera, battery life is better than average. I shot a lot while we were in Hawaii, but never ran out of power in a day. A battery charger is provided, and the camera can also be powered or charged using the USB port. Nikon has clearly invested the Z6 with excellent quality and good usability engineering. Once I had the controls customized, I quickly felt at home, able to make adjustments easily. With the exception of burst speed and buffer, still features feel complete. But there is room for more capability in the video configurations. Now, if you've watched this video and are wondering about the Z7, it's so similar that watching my Z6 to Z7 comparison is enough. That will show you everything that you need to know. And for those who need to know, the Z6 says made in Japan. I expect Nikon's quality control to be the same wherever the camera is made. Thanks for watching. If you have questions or comments, I enjoy interacting with you, so post your relevant questions and civil comments below. And if this video helps, I'd love to have you as a subscriber. Thanks.